What is loneliness but a heavy feeling that tugs away at your being, seeping into your bones, unshakable, intangible? I've had my fair shares of episodic loneliness while being in crowds of strangers, loved faces, and more often than not, with myself. It looms around in unused rooms, pregnant with memories pre-lived, in the pauses of conversations that slowly ebb away to make room for tired sighs and gentle breaths. And what I've known of my close acquaintance with loneliness is the paradox of being lonely and isolating yourself further as you get sucked deeper into that bubble while simultaneously yearning for a spray of deeply fulfilling human connections. Loneliness has carved a niche for itself in small pockets of each day, being wrestled with quietly, shrugged off, and hurriedly replaced with the throes of distraction, almost as if to rob its chance of settling in and letting yourself be aware of it. I'm no exception to this and have found myself mindlessly scrolling through, lapping up whatever bright, new, shiny thing pops up onto my feed, and eventually taking loneliness to bed with me. It builds up in crescendo over stretched out days and tears away at the insides that the hurt is almost physical. I couldn't quite separate the feeling of being lonely apart from the state of being alone, two concepts which to me seemed intricately intertwined with each other, but the differences were apparent when it dawned on me that it is unsurprisingly possible to feel utterly lonely when in the presence of people who are just there to bridge the physical gap. Small talk about issues you couldn't care less about, bubble up and dissolve in throes of attempts at getting through, hit invisible barriers, and end in the defeated retreat at the realization that, however sociable our species are, man is primarily lonely by birth. However, despite its negative nuances, loneliness is fascinating and not just as another one of the perplexing myriad of emotions that we feel, but also as a space, a birthplace to discover and to create. More often than not, we are compelled to protect ourselves from the meandering gaze of loneliness by forcing ourselves to go meet people, make plans, busy ourselves with a perpetual stream of things to check off and never really sit down with the feeling. Looking it in the eye, and maybe do an introspective digging within. To consider the possibility that in confronting loneliness, one could be driven to question by what it actually means to be alive and exist. Many artists, writers, and other creators have tackled the beastly beauty of loneliness in their work, trying to capture and dissect it, or have drawn inspiration from it to create exquisite and deeply haunting masterpieces. One of my favorite depictions has to be Edward Hopper's Nighthawks, which portrays a scene at the midnight diner where four obscure figures stand in close proximity with each other, but there is this aura of disconnect that rings loud and intense, contrary to the peaceful setting of the painting. Similar to this piece is his work, Hotel Room, where a woman is by herself, sitting at the edge of the bed and is seemingly lost in contemplation, and while we can't quite make out her facial expression, hidden under the shadows of the lighting, the loneliness of the woman seeps through to reverberate with our own, mirroring the loneliness that we often feel in the privacy of closed spaces. Many of Hopper's work have this recurring theme of loneliness, which he depicts beautifully and true to its essence, giving it quite a melancholic, beautiful edge and representing it in a more multifaceted form. Olivia Lang, in her book, The Lonely City, ventures and dives into studying works of art that have taken shape from states of loneliness and explores the art of being alone, the romanticism of the condition of human loneliness, and the shame that often arises in confessing how lonely we feel to others. Loneliness is personal, and it is also political. Loneliness is collective, it is a city. As to how to inhabit it, there are no rules, and nor is there any need to feel shame, only to remember that the pursuit of individual happiness does not trump or excuse our obligations to each other. We are in this together, this accumulation of scars, this world of objects, this physical and temporary heaven that so often takes on the countenance of hell. What matters is kindness, what matters is solidarity. What matters is staying alert, staying open. Because if we know anything from what has gone before us, it is that the time for feeling will not last. With all this being said, it's often easy to fall into the loop of feeling lonely, and it creates breeding grounds for depression, and at other times, loneliness stems from being caught in a depressive loop. In those circumstances, it is crucial for one to return to whatever harbor one has strayed off from and seek the company of our loved ones, and sometimes the comfort of warm strangers who, at a point in time, must inevitably have battled with loneliness themselves.